Hey team, welcome back. It's great to have you for another Three Rangers Foundation Transition Tuesday webinar. And I'm pretty excited about this guest because it's such a unique opportunity here in the state where most Rangers reside of Georgia. So Dean Matthew Auer, you are the Dean and Arts Professor of Public and International Affairs at the School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Georgia. That is a long title. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's good to be with you, Tony.
All right, so Dean, let's not bury the lead here. You've got a great program for veterans aspiring to continue into public service. Just give us that elevator speech, that 30,000-foot view of what you offer at the University of Georgia.
Sure. Thanks, Tony. So, I really think that our school, and we're really talking about graduate programs, there's undergraduate programs, so I'm going to focus on the graduate programs. Maybe we could just hone in on two in particular that, to my mind, from the time I got here and before learning about the programs, I really see them as the quintessential public service oriented, professionally oriented course of study for students who are coming out, transitioning from military to civilian careers. It's really it's different from, frankly, what I learned when I was in school. I was taking political science courses. They tend to be pretty abstract. This is a decidedly roll up your sleeves. I'm thinking seriously about a career in a managerial capacity or an analytical capacity in government or in adjacent fields that are public facing. One program, if we have a chance to talk about it, is really focusing on the domestic context by and large. Then the other one is internationally focused.
Well, I love it. And so Georgia is a military-friendly school. In fact, I don't know if in our pre-talk, if I told you, Mr. William Huff actually lives in Columbus, Georgia. He's helped set up the Georgia Student Association there. Very active. So two large Ranger bases here in Georgia that just make your program something that I think our folks would desire. And if you could up front, let's touch on, there's this idea, well, I've got to go to Georgetown, right? Or I need to be in the national capital region. I need to be where the policymakers are at. Yeah. What makes Georgia kind of uniquely situated here in the Southeast for folks who still want to make that impact?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, we've had a program in Masters of Public Administration. I sort of think of it as our flagship professional degree program at the graduate level for decades. And for as long as there's been a U.S. News and World Report ranking those programs, we've always been in the top 10. Those are real bragging rights for us and for the University of Georgia. Generally, there are 260 or so programs that are ranked each year, and we're just consistently in the top 10. And I think the view is, we actually do want the students to come to campus because that comparative advantage of really engaging directly with faculty and your peers for us is going to be a better experience, a more formative experience than it would be if we had an online course. And I do get that they're an online course of study. I get that there are real trade-offs there. If you have a family, you have a spouse that's working, it's just easier to do online. We don't have that, so I'm sort of starting with what we don't have, but I'm also just, going to double down on the value of our program. If you can get to Athens, and what we've been trying to do over the past few years is we are so eager to have veterans, active military folks, in the National Guard Reserves, try to make it as easy as possible for them to actually do coursework here, whether it's part-time or full-time. And for us, actually, a number of students are doing the degree program who are not even veterans, who are doing it part-time because they're working full-time. And so many of our classes are actually in the evening. And that's been true for as long as we've been around. But, this program, the Masters of Public Administration program, is training folks who are going to go into senior positions in state and local government and in federal government. And then, again, in adjacent areas like public-facing nonprofit organizations, consulting, where you've got public sector clients, So presently, about 40% of our students end up working for state, county, or local government in the state of Georgia. And I'll be honest with you, I think that in no small part because of this program and the quality of students year after year, the quality of local government in Georgia is as good as it is vis-a-vis some other states that I won't mention. We just have incredibly professional civil servants who have really great public service values, and they're incredibly well trained. And a number of those folks are former military, and they've excelled. They're just terrific at what they do. They kind of had that predilection, before they started their graduate training because they already were public servants by virtue of being in the military. So it's sort of like pushing on an open door, and it's a fulfilling career after this training.
Well, I did a little bit of research. So we have a fair number, of course, of University of Georgia graduates here in Columbus, Georgia, from your school. And what's interesting about Columbus, we were the first consolidated government in the state of Georgia, and a kind of proof in pudding of civil service in action. And so we've kind of hit. We know that the demand is there. And then you also mentioned another key part, I think, Dean, is that you don't necessarily have to go to DC to make that impact. But 40%, I believe you said, of folks will stay in the state of Georgia. What other careers? Where are the other folks going? Do they go back to home states, new opportunities? And if you could, with that answer, because you've been so reputable, around so long, with folks around the nation, I bet there's probably a good mentor kind of peer tie for those next steps.
That's right. I mean, we have about 11,000 graduates from the school. So, you never bark alone if you're a Georgia Bulldog. Pretty much anywhere you go, any major city or secondary city, there's going to be not just a Bulldog network, but folks are going to be like automatically interested in you because you're a Bulldog. So the network is I've never seen anything like it. I've been at multiple institutions. Those institutions talk about their alumni network. They're real, but the sort of cohesion, the sort of interest in okay, you're here now. You're now part of my network. What is it that you do? How can we work together? I've just never seen anything quite like it until I got to the University of Georgia. So combined with that, because we have a national presence with our school in terms of our expertise in leadership, public budgeting and finance, nonprofit management, local government management, we're sort of a known quantity in this space. It isn't just Georgia municipalities and local government or state government coming to us, but it's also, we have regular, if you will, clients from other states that recognize that quality proposition because of how we train our students. So we have folks coming from, for example, Arizona. Arizona is really good with state budgeting and finance. That's in part because they hire a lot of folks from us. So you can find careers in government anywhere from Washington to Little Washington and Virginia, and you're going to find people who've been trained at the University of Georgia. I've been so impressed with the fact that by virtue of being recognized in multiple rankings for being really good at what you do, you get a national reputation, and places that are hiring will take what would otherwise be, maybe we're seeing what's just within state for expertise for a city manager role, because we want somebody who understands our city. Well, lo and behold, we have city managers that have been trained at the University of Georgia who are working in very far-flung places, not just around the country, but in urban management, urban planning positions around the world.
All right, and so two main degree programs for graduate students in resident there in Athens: public administration, international policy. The name kind of gives you a clue of the difference, but if you don't mind, let's start with public administration and kind of get into little nuts and bolts. What would someone expect if they chose that degree option?
Sure. So the Master's of Public Administration program is 41 credit hours. So if you think of it this way, most courses are 3 credit hours, and there's what we call a socialization seminar where you really get to know your class and the faculty in a concentrated week at the very beginning. That counts as a credit hour. Students will complete this program if they're full-time over the course of 2 years. There are a set of core courses, and then you can specialize. So some folks will specialize in public budgeting and finance. I'm going to make a special plug in that area. Folks who have training in public budgeting and finance are incredibly valuable because they tend to have training that's a little bit different than if you went and got an MBA. So let's say, you got an MBA. A lot of MBA programs don't really teach public budgeting and finance. It's different. It's not the same as private sector financial management. Being able to understand and have people with expertise in public budgeting and finance can really understand public revenue, understand taxation, understand how you use those scarce resources and what happens. If you're going to tinker with the income tax, you're going to tinker with property taxes and sales tax. What are the implications of that? And being really sophisticated about doing that type of accounting. It's just not commonly taught really in business schools. So I've always thought of public budgeting and finance, and having been at this now for in administrative roles for over 20 years, it's a recession-proof industry. You need to have these people who have expertise, whether times are good or bad. And when times are bad, you need people with public budgeting and finance experience to understand how to get your town, your municipality, your state out of trouble, and to also work and advise elected officials on making hard decisions about what you're going to spend money on and what you're going to stop spending money on. The same would be true, though, I think, when it comes to government leadership and management roles. Like how do you take an organization and make it as effective as possible, whether that's a planning office in a large municipality, or you're serving as an advisor to try to think about law enforcement and dealing with, a set of different duties and responsibilities that pull a police force in different directions. How do you set priorities? How do you do program evaluation work to really see if the interventions that you do are being effective? I mean, it doesn't sound super sexy, but I got to tell you, all the best organizations do that kind of work, and they look for that kind of expertise, and that's the kind of training that we would be doing in this program, whether it's health policy, public finance, local government management, nonprofit management, and other fields.
Oh, I could just see right away in the interview question that could get the level of expertise based on the program from the good idea fairy, and whether or not it is even something that is thought through to assessment,
right?
Specifically in budgeting. I can see how that, because you mentioned with the state of Arizona, specifically for their budgeting and what you offer there, makes your school so competitive. But let's say we're looking outside of our city, state, nation, and we're looking for something a little bit broader. I think that's where the International Policy Masters comes in. Will you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, so the Masters of International Policy program is actually 36 credit hours, a little bit of a shorter program. The focus of our program, if you look at different international affairs or international politics or policy programs, we think that we've built a really good mousetrap because we're not trying to do everything. What we focus on is security. And that's one of the reasons why I've always felt that our program was a great stepping stone for the military to civilian transition. There are many programs that do everything under the sun when it comes to international affairs. We don't, and we're proud of that. That's just part of our brand. So we focus on national security in the traditional sense. We focus on energy security and human security. And that is basically that is the core of our program. And so I think that our program, in some ways, the best evidence of the success of that model is our placements. So the vast majority of our placements are working for Department of Defense, defense contractors, the Department of Energy national laboratories like Sandia or Pacific Northwest Laboratories or Oak Ridge, because they have that specialized expertise focusing, for example, on energy security and nuclear security. Our students are really sophisticated about things like export control and strategic trade. These are the kinds of things that you do, I think, get close to when you're active military. These are the kinds of things that your bosses and your bosses' bosses are thinking about when they're thinking about supply chain and chain of custody and kind of understanding how to get the logistics right to make sure that you and your platoon are safe, that you're really thinking about what's needed in order to accomplish a mission. That's really what this is about. It's decidedly about security as manifested the ways I've just described it. And, before too long, I should mention that both for this program and for the Masters of Public Administration, we've developed some pathways for veterans and also for active military that I think are really appealing. When my colleague is on location with you guys, I think later in the spring or early summer, they'll have more details. But basically what we've done is we've created some endowed scholarship funds to help enable veterans and active military students to join us. And in addition, we're partners in something I'm really excited about called Service to Service. The Service to Service program is sponsored by an organization called the Volcker Alliance, which focuses on public service, in collaboration with an organization called We the Veterans and Military Families. And the idea with Volcker Alliance and We the Veterans is they're really eager to have students train and develop knowledge and expertise for careers in public service, particularly state and local government. We're now partners in that. And I'm going to do a hat tip to appeal to you, Tony, but another partner in that are my friends at Ohio State at the Glenn School. So we're excited about that. We love our friends there. So that program will bring together all veteran students that join those two different academic programs and bring them together with cohorts of other students, for example, at the Glenn School, to meet and to engage and develop their networks that way. But no less important, meet executives, folks who themselves are former military, who are prominent in federal agencies, state and local government, to talk about careers in public service, and also just to build that network and talk about job openings, just to develop that professional preparation for a career in public service. And those activities are sponsored again by Volcker Alliance and We the Veterans, and we'll be in that program in earnest with our new cohort of veteran students beginning in the fall of 2026.
Yeah, well, thank you for that financial overview. It sounds like don't self-select yourself out of an opportunity to participate in these programs, because some great organizations, individual donors have found resources to meet if talented folks want those positions. And you started to hit on then, theoretically, you go to school to be educated. I get it. I think I got that. I understand that. But you also go to school to prepare you for the workforce, right? For the thing that it is you are studying that you want to do. So you mentioned the coming together with other schools and the other opportunities, working with other organizations. What does a recommended summer in between academic years look like? Are those encouraged internships? Do folks find those through alumni? Moving into hiring, right? Sometimes there's an idea of public service. There's an idea that you cannot make a comfortable living, or that you might, generally you're not going to be in charge of something maybe to start. Could you kind of talk through, not to cheerlead, that this is for everybody, but that what to expect from this program in terms of potential employment?
It is typical in those summers to do an internship. One of the great things I think about these two programs is that it's kind of a hand-painted experience for the student, in the form of, you're not just sitting down with the director or with a faculty member to develop an academic advising plan. But there is a tension from the beginning, from that socialization seminar, for example, with the Master of Public Administration. And then in the case of the Master of International Policy, it's an even smaller program. And your cohort, and that's intentional. The reason it's so small is we want to make sure that by the time you're approaching the end of that program, you're going to have a great job coming out of it. So, that's why we have, I think that last academic year, maybe 95% of the students were settled, so to speak. Either they were in a full-time job or they were continuing on and maybe getting a PhD. So they had, a destination. And the MPA program has also had really excellent results. One of the things I would say, over time, I do think that the wages, so to speak, the prospects of having a respectable salary and compensation working in government has improved over time. Tends to be a little bit better still if you're working at a senior level for a consulting firm that has a set of public sector clients. So again, I could be working for, one of the big accounting firms, and they didn't hire somebody with an MBA, they hired somebody with an MPA who understands public sector clients in that world, whether it's an Ernst & Young or another one of those firms. And sure, if I'm, a partner, I'm probably doing better than if I'm working for county government. I guess one thing I would say there, though, is the county government role, and pretty soon, when you are, when they see talent, you will move up. And that's in part because local government basically in all of our states, and certainly in the state of Georgia, they are not over-employing people. There are some counties in our state that basically have, a few people who are doing everything under the sun in the context of public administration for that county. There might be a single county commissioner, and that person is not, unless they're Einstein, they can't do it all. They're not geniuses. They don't know everything from understanding and being able to be thoughtful about, let's say, public infrastructure for transportation, like which bridges here are really sturdy and which aren't. I'm not an engineer. Are we supposed to bid that work out? How do we actually make sure that we have a competitive bid? How do we communicate that to the community? Like, what are the expectations for public input? Oh my gosh, we are understaffed in the city manager's office. Like, what's the role of a city manager versus a mayor? City managers are super important in our state. How do they work vis-a-vis the planning department? How do you deal with, let's say, a set of elected officials in a particular county that historically haven't seen eye to eye with the commissioners or with the experts at the municipal level? If you have talent and you can kind of deal with that world, you're going to move up the ladder fast. That's what we've discovered. So we have so many graduates who just after literally a couple of years, the kind of responsibilities they have and the autonomy they have, they just wouldn't be able to find it in the private sector. If you work for, like a big Fortune 500 type of organization, it may pay well, it may pay better, but it won't be a public service type of job. And the responsibilities that you have, I wager to bet that they just won't be as fulfilling.
Well, I thank you for that perspective, because it's one of those, you can do both, or you can do either or. Your career isn't your first job, doesn't have to be your last job.
That's true.
So having expertise and touching both always brings a lot of credibility and diversity to your career, to the table as you move on. So as we kind of close, Dean, so I think this is an important question for our demographic. So if I'm a graduate in one of your programs full-time at the University of Georgia, do I get an option to purchase football tickets?
Oh, right. Yeah. So undergraduates, yes. Graduate students, I have a feeling it's not as easy to do, to be perfectly
Fair,
honest.
fair. So
Undergraduates, yes.
we got to be prepared. We call that managing expectations.
Expectations, right? Now we have a terrific Veterans Resource Center here, so they'll be able to answer that in a more with more precision than I will. But you can also come to me. I mean, we have ways of, we have friends in athletics, so.
I love it. I love it. I had to throw that one out with you. Dean, thank you for this information. We're super excited to see members of your team down here in Columbus, Georgia, on June 16th for our Ranger for Life Symposium. That's when we bring all of our local Rangers together, those in transition considering about getting out of the military. I tell you, University of Georgia in the state of Georgia is a first choice school. So it's going to be great to have your folks here at June 16th. I know your time is valuable, and I thank you for spending some time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Dean. And next month, we'll be back again with another great Transition Tuesday webinar. We'll see you then.